Welcome to our introduction tutorial to Adobe Flash. Before we begin, I'll point out that the current version of Flash has actually been renamed. Adobe are now calling it Adobe Animate, and there is a 2017 Creative Cloud version. The version being used by our Year 9 class for this unit will be the 2014 Flash Creative Cloud version. All features will remain the same between the two systems, other than a few minor upgrades across the place. So to begin, let's open Adobe Flash. So you can use Spotlight to search for Adobe Flash CC 2014, that's the one, and open it up. What we're going to be looking at today in Adobe Flash is how to work with Canvas, how to use some of the basic tools such as zoom, fit, and center to stage, using layers, some basic tools, working with frames and some of the symbols that are used on the frames, and also looking at the timeline. So when you open up for the first time, you normally see this window, and you can see there's a whole range of different things that we can start. We're going to be working in a HTML5 canvas. Just click on that and you'll see hopefully the same screen that I've got. The first thing we'd like to point out is that across the Adobe Suite, most of the features remain fairly consistent. So typically we look at size as measured in pixels. We can convert the units to millimeters or inches or centimeters or meters, whatever we need to. But typically when we're building things for computers, such as animations, we would normally look at that in terms of pixels. So we're going to have a look on the right-hand side of our screen, and you should be able to see on the very right-hand side, you've got your tool panel. Then next to that, you've got your properties and your library panel. Now I can interchange between properties and libraries, and depending what other windows I want open, they may appear across here as well. Then we've got our stage. Okay, our stage is our canvas. In Photoshop, this would be the document where you're actually drawing your magazine cover. In Flash, it's our canvas where our animation is going to be drawn. Down the bottom, you can see we've got our layers being listed here on our timeline, and you can see our timeline running from left to right. Then down the very bottom, we've got some play buttons, deletes, new layers, and some more specifications in terms of our project. First thing I'd like you to do is to resize your canvas. So to resize the canvas, we are on the Properties tab, and we're going to go down, you can see Properties again. You can see FPS. FPS is frames per second, and that's our frame rate. And you'll recall that the industry standard that we work with is 24 frames per second for regular animations. Now the size here is 550 by 400 pixels, which means we have 550 pixels running from left to right, and then 400 pixels running from top to bottom. So we're going to change this to 1000 pixels multiplied by 800 pixels. And click enter, and your screen should look similar to this. Now you'll notice now that the canvas is no longer in the center of the stage. So I'm going to show you that up the top next to the zoom percentage, you can see there is a little crosshairs, which is the center stage button. If you click that, that will center the stage to your window so that you can see what's happening. You'll also notice that it's probably too big and we can't actually see the entire canvas. So we're going to make use of the zoom features. You can select any percentage you want, but I will typically be working with fit in window, which forces the canvas to fit in that size. You've now looked at the canvas, creating a canvas and resizing it. I'd now like you to look at the stage or canvas color, and we can click on that background color button below the size panel in properties, and we can select any color that we like for our background. I'm going to select this nice pink color here, because that's how I feel today. Now the most important thing for you to remember is that what you see on your screen for your stage color doesn't necessarily mean that that will be the output color. At the moment, what we've done is we've changed this background color on my screen to be pink. But if I was going to export this file as an animation, you would not see the pink. It would come up as transparent. And the reason for that is that we don't actually have anything on the animation canvas yet. We haven't drawn a shape. We haven't put a symbol in. There are no lines. There is no text. Yes, we can see a color, but the color of the stage is never going to be visible when you export your file. It will always be shown as transparent. So the color of the stage is really only for us when we're doing our work. Maybe it will help you in your design phase, but it definitely is not something that is exported. So next we're going to look down at layers, and you can see I've got layer 1. Now if I rename that, I can double click on it and I can call it anything. I can call this my background layer. And just like in Photoshop, I can add as many new layers as I want. So I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to call this circle, and I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to call this layer square. Now, we've got our 3 layers. Just like in Photoshop, the layer that is on top of the list is the one that is going to be seen on top, and the layers that are on the bottom are the ones that are not going to be seen. Unless there is nothing in front of them on any other layer. Okay. So we've looked at how to create new layers and how to name them, and I'm just going to show you how to reorder them. Just like in Photoshop, you can click on your layer and you can drag it up, and you can reorder the layers however you like, and you can keep changing them as you need to. We're going to have a quick look at our timeline here. You'll see I've got the number 1 with a red rectangle around it, right through to the number 100 over here on this side. Those numbers don't represent seconds, they represent frames. So I have 1 frame, 2 frames, 3, 4, 5, right through to my 100th frame. And to make it easy to work out where you're up to, you'll see that every 5th frame is actually shaded a little bit darker just to help you calculate where you're up to. So if I wanted to look at 1 second of footage, I know that 1 second of a movie or an animation is going to have 24 frames. So I can move this red rectangle here. Well, I can't yet, but I will be able to move it to this point here, frame 24. Everything that happens in those boxes there is going to be represented by 1 single second of footage. So it's important that we remember that when we're creating our animations, we don't want to be creating 1 movement per box because it's going to be too fast and the user won't necessarily be able to see it. Okay? Now, you can probably see on the timeline here that there is a hollow circle on the first frame for all 3 layers. That hollow circle shows me that there is absolutely nothing on that layer yet. It is an empty layer. So if I click on the square layer, and I now go to my tools menu and I pick the rectangle tool, and I pick a color like green, I'm going to change my outline so that there is no outline is what I would prefer to have. So I'm going to click this white box with a red line through it. That means no outline. So I've got a green box coming with no outline, and I'm going to draw my rectangle over here. You'll notice now that I've drawn my rectangle, down in my timeline, the square layer now has a colored in circle. This is to show me that there is now something on that layer. And if I look down at my circle layer, you can see I've got a hollow circle because there's nothing on that yet. So again, I'm going to go to my circle layer, I'm going to select the circle tool. Let's pick a different color now. We might pick a nice blue color, and I'm going to draw a circle down here. And you can see again on my timeline, that's colored in. My background still has nothing in it. Okay, so even though you can see pink, my background is still empty, so nothing is going to be shown when I export my animation. Now that I've got a circle and a square on my screen and they're each on the right layers, let's create 3 seconds of an animation. So we remember that 24 frames is 1 second, which means 48 frames is 2 seconds, which means if we've done our math correctly, hopefully we'll find that 72 frames is going to be 3 seconds of animation. Now, I can't just click here and start drawing. It doesn't work like that. I need to tell Flash that I want frames to be put there. So I'm going to right click on it and I've got a whole heap of different frames options. And I'm going to say that I would like to insert a keyframe. You should now see that I've got this square layer with a solid circle. I've now got a grey bar running all the way across to frame 71 where there is a hollow rectangle. And then there is a new section with a coloured in circle. Your keyframes are frames where things are different. As soon as we get to the end of this hollow rectangle, and you can see the line between those two symbols, that means anything that happens from this point, 72 onwards, isn't going to affect what happens from 1 to 71. So I can pick up my select tool, move my square and move it downwards. And then when I move back to frame 1, it's going to look like it hasn't moved. Now that I have 72 frames in my animation, I can make use of this playhead. And it enables me to drag along to every single frame. And you'll see when I get to 72, the rectangle or the square moves. You're probably also noticing that the circle is missing. Now the circle's missing because if we look at the circle layer, there are no frames after frame number 1. It's empty. So of course the circle is missing. If we want the circle to be there, we need to also go to frame 72, right click and insert keyframe. And now my circle is going to be there as well. So I now have 3 seconds of film where I have one single change of a square happening on the 72nd frame, and I'm also going to move the circle in the 72nd frame. So when we flick between these two using the timeline header now, or the playhead, you'll see that it moves. Okay? But for these first 71 frames, there is absolutely no change happening. So what we've done now, we have created a canvas, we've resized the canvas, we've recolored the canvas. Then we have created layers, we've renamed the layers and we've reordered them. We've used tools such as the select tool, we've used the square tool and the oval tool. We've moved shapes. We've created frames, so between frame 1 and frame 71, you can see all of these colored in sections are frames. The ones that have circles on them are keyframes, and when the circle is colored in, we know that it is got something on the stage. If the circle was empty, it would be a blank keyframe. We've also looked at the timeline header, and this is where the numbers of frames are. That's the timeline header. We've looked at individual frames, and we've looked at keyframes. That's all for our introduction to Flash. In our next lesson, we'll be looking at the tools known as tween. In our insert menu, you'll notice there are 3 tweens here. We're only interested in motion tween and shape tween. So for homework, you should be researching what motion tween is and what shape tween is, writing a short description of each in a Google document, ready to show me next lesson so I can show you how both of these work. Please save this document as we'll be using it in our next lesson when we're working with shape and motion tween. Thank you.